Kia ora. My name is Dr. Tracey Clissolds, and it gives me great pleasure to be able to talk to you today about women's bone health across the lifespan. Firstly, a bit about me. So, I am a lecturer. I've been lecturing for over 30 years in the area of sports nutrition, exercise science and physiology, and population health and well-being. In addition to that, I'm a researcher in osteoporosis prevention, and I'm going to be sharing a lot of my research findings with you today. I'm also a consultant as a nutrition consultant, but also in the areas of training, and also we are able to offer a DEXA service here at the institution where I work. So this fits under a research umbrella for data that we're collecting over the next 5 years. And in a past life, I have been an elite athlete, so running marathons, representing New Zealand and winning many of the New Zealand marathons and some international marathons as well. And I also have two very cool kids. So Taylor Blue is 24 and Daisy is 12. So the topic I'm going to be talking a lot about today is osteoporosis. So we need to set the scene and understand a little bit about what osteoporosis is. So it's basically defined as a reduction in the density and quality of bone, which increases the risk of fracture. And if we have a look at the pictures that are on the screen here, we can see that we've got a picture of the three main areas that fracture in New Zealand and worldwide. And those are the places where, when we use DEXA technology, so dual energy X-ray absorptiometry, we scan at least two of those sites to be able to provide some information that helps us to guide the management and treatment of osteoporosis. So osteoporosis incidence is very high, and women are disproportionately represented in these stats. So 59% of women, which is essentially 2 out of 3 women, and 29% of men will suffer a fracture from the age of 60 years of age. So when we're talking about the financial burden of osteoporosis, we're talking about huge figures. So our health system has the burden of around $1.1 billion per year spent in managing osteoporosis and the consequences of falls, which of course are fractures. And I love this quote by Ban Ki-moon that says that osteoporosis essentially is a global public health emergency happening in slow motion. And partly that is because of the fact that we only have a finite amount of time to grow our peak bone density or our peak bone mass, and then we start slowly losing it from the age of about 30. So we don't feel this, it's an asymptomatic condition. And the next few slides are going to explain the time course of change for bone. So this question, when should we start focusing on our bones? And if we have a little look at this graph, we'll see that we basically have 30 years. So you can see here that peak bone mass for both men and women is achieved around 30 years of age. So that's the time where we grow the skeleton that's going to see us out for the rest of our lives. And then what you'll see is that a key difference between men and women is that women have significantly less bone mass than men. So men have about 20% more bone than women. Another reason why women should be the rightful focus of research attention into this condition of osteoporosis. You'll notice that from the age of 30 to 50, for both men and women, there is a slow reduction in bone mineral density. So it's around about 0.5 to 1% of our bone mineral density lost per year over that time. And then you'll see for women around the age of 50, so menopause is around 51 years of age in New Zealand, 51, 52 worldwide. And at that time, that's like falling off a cliff for women in terms of bone health, where women can lose up to 20% of their entire bone mass or bone mineral density in the 5 to 7 years around menopause. So when should we start focusing on our bones? Well, arguably puberty. If we see the stats that tell us that girls gain around 40% of our bone mass around puberty, with 92% of the total bone mineral density accrued by late puberty, so around 18 years of age. And for our boys, it's the same thing, although it's about a 2 to 3 year delay for males due to pubertal gender differences. But this hypothesis, I think, is powerful. It's been theorized that by achieving a 10% higher peak bone mass in young adulthood, this could delay the onset of osteoporosis by 13 years and reduce the lifetime risk of fracture by 50%. So possibly, when should we start focusing on our bones? The first 30 years is a no-brainer because that's where most of the bone growing action happens. I think we need to understand a little bit of physiology to really understand how bone works. So the two main players in bone physiology are the osteoclasts. So you'll see these here in under the blue box. The osteoclasts are the breaking cells in the bone equation. And then we've got the osteoblasts. So the osteoblasts are the builders. And when we're thinking about the role of our hormones on this process, for females, estrogen has the ability to inhibit the osteoclasts. So they are the breaking bones. So when we still have estrogen on board, then we're able to minimize the breaking part of that bone turnover cycle. Which means that we're actually building more bone than we're breaking for the first 30 years. And then as estrogen starts to be reduced in the female system, we start to have less of a effect on this breaking aspect, and we start actually breaking more bone, slightly more bone than we're building between the age of about 30 to 50. And then of course when estrogen production becomes diminished, we get a massive loss in bone because now these osteoclasts are able to act without any kind of inhibition at all. And I suppose if we're thinking about the osteoblasts, the building cells for bone turnover, the male hormone testosterone has an important role in upregulating the osteoblasts, so bone formation. So as males age and have less testosterone in their systems, there's less of an effect on upregulating these osteoblasts to the same effect of having this slow loss from the age of 30. And what we know is that a bone turnover cycle, which is basically a completed cycle from what you see in this picture, takes around 4 to 6 months and can be as long as 9 months. So if you're looking to create research in the space of bone health, it's really important that the research lasts at least 1 year to be able to really show that an actual difference has happened in terms of our bone and our bone health. So why premenopausal women? Why focus on premenopausal women? So I've already mentioned that the normal bone losses after we've achieved that peak bone mass, so from 30 years of age, are around 0.5% of bone mineral density per year. But then, of course, this gets exacerbated across menopause. So 1 to 2% of bone mineral density can be lost in this time. And again, that accrues to a massive 20% of our entire bone mineral density being lost in those 5 to 7 years just after menopause. So from a research perspective, I was really interested in targeting premenopausal women and looking at whether it was possible to sort of affect that small loss of bone that that's predicted to be lost from 30 to 50. Was there something we could do differently to actually build a better skeleton going into this debilitating menopausal phase? So when I was doing my due diligence and reading the literature around understanding further what bone needs to be optimized, there was lots of information that was already there that sort of allowed me to speculate that I could actually make a difference by actually creating the right kind of bone stimulus and applying it premenopausally to actually and essentially build a fence at the top of that cliff before menopause actually occurs. So prevention was really the focus of my research, and I want to tell you a little bit more about this research in these coming slides. So some of the research or the pre-existing research or literature that I engaged with was to do with Wolff's Law. So this is not new information. Wolff's Law is over 100 years old. And basically what Wolff's Law describes is that bone adapts to mechanical loads. So mechanical forces exceeding this remodeling threshold will actually stimulate bone, so switch it on and actually promote bone formation, increase bone mass and increase bone strength. So how much force does the bone need to be able to switch on and make these positive adaptations? So it needs a decent amount of force, so greater than 3 body weights of force. It needs that force to be applied quickly, so a rate of force development of 43 body weights per second. It doesn't need a lot of these forces, so a brief application of these forces, so less than 50 ground contacts. And also, these stimulus need to be applied in different ways, in different directions, so not just in vertical forces like jumping up and down. We need sideways, forward to back, all sorts of different novel directions to keep the bone from saturating to the stimulus that it receives and to continue to switch on. So these things that had to be considered when thinking about how to optimize bone have been termed osteogenic thresholds, so thresholds to turn or switch bone on. And so the first couple of years of my research was spent with force platforms, so experimenting with how to create these forces to be able to turn bone on, but to do it in a not very complicated way, so that these exercises could be rolled out and packaged up into a program that could be done in a self-directed way in a home setting without any equipment, so therefore overcoming a lot of the barriers that we have and that women have to being part of regular exercise. So if we go and have a look at some existing recommendations that are out there in the world, if we go to Australia and we look at the Exercise Sports Science Australia information about what we need to do to optimize bone health, we can already find this information that actually encourages us to engage in these high impact activities. So that's fantastic for us to know, because there's already a lot of research out there, including my research, that says that these activities that, and if you have a look at the position statement here, it says low risk individuals in the prevention of osteoporosis need to engage in high impact activities, so greater than 4 body weights. Do this 4 to 7 times a week, so do 50 jumps per session, and basically have some integrated rest periods to be able to allow the bone to sort of resynthesize and receive those forces. So even if we go and look at moderate risk individuals and high risk individuals, the recommendation is still to be able to create these higher impact activities to be able to improve bone health. Now, one of the things that's missing in this very, very powerful and very, very important recommendation is not the fact that we need to be providing these high impact activities, but we need a little bit more information about how we need to land from these jumps. So yes, people know that they need to do these jumps, but how do we land? And what we know from sports is that we're taught to land from a very young age, but we're taught to land in such a way that we are attenuating those forces in our muscles and not taking those forces in our bones. And we do that for a good reason, because we're trying to protect our joints. And when we're having like hundreds and hundreds, potentially thousands of forces going through our skeleton in a game of sport or going for a run, then it's not safe for us to land the way that I'm going to be talking to you about shortly, in the targeted way that stimulates bone. So we still want to do our landings for sports the way that we've been taught, but when we do our bone focused landings, they need to be quite different. So I certainly want you to be aware of the fact that there are very credible organisations out there that are already talking about the need for high impact to improve bone health. The other thing that Exercise Sports Science Australia is recommending is doing some resistance training. And of course, this is something that's so important for our ageing population and especially our women. So, knowing that weight training is to not just enhance our muscular system, but also our muscle pulls on our bone, and that provides a very important stimulus as well. So, yes, we need muscle to be able to age functionally and to have good quality of life and to be lean, because we know our muscle dictates our metabolic cost of living. So the more muscle we have in our body, the more calories we burn at rest. So looking after our muscle during a time when, as we age, we suffer from what's called sarcopenia. So our muscles will diminish in their size and strength as we age naturally, just as our bone does. So what we need to do is we need to put some interventions in place that help us to protect our muscle and protect our bone. So these impact and jump landings that I'm going to talk to you about soon are important from our bone perspective, and lifting heavier weights to be able to maintain our muscle strength and to have good body composition as we age is important as well. So I embarked on the bone health study, and this was around 10 years ago now. So this research has been conducted for a long time, and we have been not just the original research, but we're still continuing on to research in this space and learn more about how to create the right kind of impact to be able to enhance bone health. So if we have a little bit of a look at this set of slides, we can get a little bit of an idea of what the jump landings look like for individuals that are doing these participating in these jump landing programs to optimize bone health. So you'll see that it involves a double jump. So this is to satisfy the second criteria of the osteogenic threshold, which is to be able to apply the forces quickly. So it's a jump is what the individuals are doing, not just a single jump, but 2 jump landings. And the technique is very, very important. But it's not so much about how you jump as it is about how you land. So the information that I utilised in my original clinical trials has been developed into an app called Osteo-Gains. Now, within Osteo-Gains, we basically teach you how to do the jump landings that the participants did in my clinical trials and achieved amazing improvements in not just bone mineral density or bone strength, but also other aspects that cross over into reducing the chances of falling and sustaining fractures. So these exercises, which aren't too complicated, like the OsteoVert, for example, the OsteoStar and the OsteoStride, are essentially just rejigs of a vertical jump, a star jump, and a stride jump. Now, the key difference between the jumps that we use in our jump landing program and the ones that you'll be familiar with is not so much the way you jump, but it is all about the way that you land. So it's not important to jump high. As you become better at tolerating the landing forces, you will start to naturally jump higher into these jumps. But a lot of the women that were in my clinical trials were jumping only 2 or 3 centimeters off the ground and still achieving those osteogenic thresholds that I've been discussing. The important part of the equation is the way that you land, and the landing is stiff. So instead of bending your hips, knees, and ankles to absorb the forces, you need to land with minimal flexion in your hips, knees, and ankles to be able to take those forces through your bones. The landing is not on the forefoot like it is in much of our sport landing. It is flat-footed, and it's preferable that you do these jump landings barefooted. Now, part of the reason why barefooted is so important is, firstly, shoes will absorb the forces that we're trying to provide to stimulate the bone. So some shoes are very, very heavily designed to attenuate those forces. That's what shoes are for. But we actually want these forces to go into our bones. The other thing is that doing these jump landings barefooted is actually safer than doing them in shoes, because sometimes we take forces that we're not actually safely able to tolerate when we're wearing shoes, because we get like a false sense of confidence. When we're doing these jumps barefooted, then we're relying on the proprioceptive receptors that are in our joint capsules that will tell us what we're able to tolerate. So therefore, the ability to listen to our body to be able to keep safe is an important part of the technique for these jumps. So as I said earlier, the jump is not a single jump landing, but a jump jump. So when you land, you're going to think of the ground as lava. So it's a jump jump. As soon as you land, you're cueing yourself to jump again and land again. And this is the way that the technique that we utilized with our clinical trials, and our participants were easily able to achieve this technique and found it quite safe, and they could tolerate it well. So as part of my clinical trials, I was able to provide DEXA scanning to my participants every 3 months. So this was the control group as well as the jump landing group. And what you can see in this slide is that the top scan is looking at the hip. And what you'll see here, where I'm pointing with my cursor, that's the neck of the femur, which is potentially the most vulnerable site to fracture as we age. And so I was very, very interested in whether my jump landing program could actually increase bone mineral density in this site. I was also interested in the lumbar spine. So jump landings, it was pretty likely that they were going to stimulate the lower limb, so the leg bones, but I wasn't sure whether those forces would get into the lower back to be able to enhance and stimulate the bones there, because maybe those forces would be attenuated by the musculature of the glutes and the lower back. What you can also see is a body composition scan. So this was also of interest to me to see whether there could possibly be some body composition changes that I could pick up between my jump group and my control group in response to this 2 to 3 minute program. So this is a very, very doable program when you think that it can be basically packaged up in under 5 minutes. So what I want to go through now is the results from my study. So this study, as I said earlier, is a 12-month study, and the first thing that I want to talk about is bone mineral density. So this is something that is talked a lot about when we talk about osteoporosis, and essentially is the only marker, I suppose, that we use when we're describing osteoporosis and osteopenia. So osteopenia describes low bone mass compared to normal, and then osteoporosis is, of course, is a more severe bone loss that is connected to an increased risk of fracture. So bone mineral density is measured in grams per centimetre squared, and it basically describes the minerals on the outside of bone. So predominantly we're talking about calcium, but there's also phosphorus and lots of other minerals there that keep the outer coating of the bone strong and basically less likely to break. So remember that for premenopausal women, so the average age in my clinical trials was 40 years of age, they were predicted to lose 0.5 to 1% of their bone mineral density per year, but they were participating in a 2 to 3 minute jump landing program that they were rolling out no more than 5 times a week. So what kind of changes did I pick up? Well, bone mineral density and the bone mineral content increased by 2 to 4%. So if we think about the age predicted losses of 0.5 to 1% a year, if we're getting gains of 2 to 4%, then that's essentially a net gain of potentially 3 to 5% bone mineral density over that year. And that was at the hip site. So I predicted I'd get some great gains at the hip, but I couldn't have expected to get such gains as what I actually found. In addition, there were gains at the lumbar spine. So remember, I wasn't sure whether the stimulus from the ground reaction forces was going to get into the lower back, but it got in. And the benefits to these research participants was 0.5 to 3% gains. So again, thinking about what's predicted, which was 0.5 to 1% loss, then those are net gains of sort of 1 to 4%. So what did I observe in my control group? Well, exactly what the age predictions predicted. So the individuals in the control group lost 0.5 to 1% across the hip and lumbar sites. But what else did I find? Well, the other thing which potentially is even more important than bone mineral density. So we know that bone mineral density tells about 70% of the story of bone strength, but there's other aspects that make bone strong. And I was able to measure those with hip structural analysis, which is a software on my DEXA machine. So this describes other skeletal factors beyond bone mineral density. So things like the girth of bone, so the cross-sectional area. So remember I showed you a picture of the neck of femur, that narrow part of the femur bone where it goes into the hip. It's potentially the narrowest piece of bone that's very susceptible to fracture. It grew in girth, in cross-sectional area, and also the geometry and microarchitecture became more robust for bone in response to these jump landings. And this is something that we know that exercise can do. So all exercise creates adaptations to our body, physical changes to our body in response to the stimulus that we apply, whether that's lifting weights or doing cardiovascular type exercise. Here we're talking about a 2 to 3 minute jump landing program that was providing the stimulus for the bone to change its structure, to become more robust in response to the regular application of those impact forces. So what sort of gains did I get? Again, massive improvements. So the bone cross-sectional area, so the bone girth, the cortical thickness, so the bone on the outside got thicker, and the predicted fracture resistance, called the section modulus, also improved 3 to 4% for all of those things. So these were incredible things that would not only change the mineral that is part of the outer structure of bone, but also the inside, the geometry and microarchitecture of bone. Some other awesome results. So I talked to you about the body composition that I measured on my DEXA machine, and this might be quite surprising to see that we had such substantial, or observed such substantial changes to our participants in the research. So losses of an average of 2.4 kgs and increases of 1.4 kgs of muscle. Now, interestingly, this was observed for both the jump group and the control group. And I think what this shows is that the DEXA scan, so getting really precise metrics about your body composition, was incredibly motivating for the participants to do more exercise, to be able to see the change in their own bodies every 3 months. Now, what I want to say here is that both the jump group and the control group did more exercise once they participated in the research, but the only difference was that the jump landing participants were doing jump landings. So none of the participants or the control group were allowed to include anything into their lifestyle that added impact. So they were doing more walking and more other types of activity that weren't going to be confounding variables for my research. But what that shows is that increasing exercise can make amazing differences to body composition, but it didn't make any difference to bone. So the control group, they had some good body composition changes, but their bone regressed just as the age predictions said they would. Whereas the people doing the 2 to 3 minute jump landing program, they still got these body composition changes, but they also got the bone changes that I've just been describing to you. Another thing that you would expect would happen, because they're doing a jumping program, is that the jumping participants increased their ability to jump by 8%. So they were able to jump higher. So that is proof that their muscles were becoming stronger. Whereas those that weren't doing the jump program, they regressed. So I talked about sarcopenia, the loss of muscle as we age. Well, we actually lose our fast twitch fibers first. So that's called powerpenia, so we lose our power. So that was happening to our control group, but that was not happening to our jump group. And again, this is proof of the blunting of powerpenia. So I used contact mats to measure reaction or reactivity in the muscle, and that improved substantially for those that were in the jump landing group by 22%, whereas the control group regressed by 9%. So what that tells us is that, when someone's going to fall, for example, if they're able to throw a leg out quickly, so react quickly, then they may be able to avert that fall. So doing this 2 to 3 minute jump landing program has the ability to not only make the bone mineral density better, but the bone strength better, the muscles around the bones stronger and more powerful and more reactive. And all of these things sort of weigh into creating a reduced risk of falling and fracturing as we age. So, how do we share these awesome results? And that was the dilemma at the end of my research project. I'd collected the data, been able to disseminate these amazing findings in peer-reviewed academic journals, but I did the research to be able to inform the general population. And so it had been a goal of mine, a vision for this research to be able to be disseminated in a way that anybody in the general population would be able to utilize these findings for themselves. So that was the creation of Osteo-Gains. So I was incredibly lucky to have an amazing group of people around me, including the professor that was my primary supervisor for my PhD, Professor John Cronin, who came around with, and I suppose reciprocated my passion for this vision to be able to share this information, and we created this app. So this app is called Osteo-Gains. Now, Osteo-Gains has been available at the Apple and Google Play Store since January this year. It's getting amazing uptake worldwide, considering that we haven't advertised it once. So we have amazing people, supporters, endorsers of this information, like Dr. Stacey Sims, who talks about my bone research when she does her influential podcasts, and people have they've gravitated to this app, and we have over 22,000 people worldwide that already have downloaded the content from this app and are participating in this jump landing program. And over time, we are creating more jumps to add to the app, and our year 2 program for this app also includes a dynamic progressive balance program that is integrated into the rest periods, so that people are getting even more bang for their buck, and all of this information is leading to stronger bones and less chance of fracture. And of course, we know that is the most important thing is empowering people with the information and education to be able to have a say in how they age. So this app basically is the program that I used with my research participants in an app format. So it's a set of coaching videos that takes you through and teaches you the technique of how to land, and progresses you with increased sort of technique and volume over 52 weeks to essentially improve your bone health. So here's some examples of the 4 osteo phases. So every program is blocked into 4 weeks. It's a repetitive program, but it's a program that's easy for you to be able to do in your own homes, to be able to do while you are waiting for your kettle to boil, while your porridge is cooking in the microwave, while you're watching your children in the playground, while you're at the beach, while you're at the park, in between bouts of gardening, whenever you can put it, wherever you can put it. When you're at work and you're taking a short break, you don't need to go anywhere specific. You don't have to wear anything specific. It's basically take off your shoes, wiggle yourself around, and then get into doing a few jumps. 2 to 3 minutes a day. I mean, one of the biggest barriers for people exercising is time. So we can find 2 to 3 minutes a day. We can do this program in the ad breaks where we're watching a program on TV, or we can do it in our cup of tea break, or we can do it just sometime where we're watching our kids play sport, or when we're just out and about, we can do this. So not only does this Osteo-Gains app provide the 52-week bone health program, it also includes some other information. So what you can see here is the Osteo-Gains preconditioning program. So this is the 4-week program that I got my research participants to do before they started to do the bone health program. So this is like an insurance policy to make sure that you are strong enough and safe to do the jump landings. And what it is it's a conditioning program. Each of the sessions lasts about 24 minutes, and it is for providing some strengthening for your legs, for your glutes, for your back, and for your core. And also it gets you to do some sub-maximal jumping movements to get familiar with what you're going to be doing in the 52-week bone health program. Because a lot of the participants in my clinical trials were completely sedentary. So they were admin workers that weren't really engaged in any regular activity. So it was really important to provide an opportunity to become stronger and more familiar with exercise before embarking on the bone health program. So this is to be done 3 times a week for 4 weeks, but many of our app users love the program so much that they do it all the time, and it's a conditioning program that can be done anytime you like. So yes, do it for 4 weeks before you start the bone health program, but you may also want to integrate this program that doesn't involve any equipment. You can do it unsupervised in your own home and safely. And then we also provide a stretching program, and this is designed to be done anytime. You could do it after the preconditioning program to help you to relax and de-stress, or you could do it independently anytime. So again, this is like a bonus program that we provide on our app that you can do. It's again around 20 minutes, and it's just a nice way to relax and de-stress. So, in a nutshell, how to optimize bone health. So we've talked about this brief high impact loading, and this is so important for us to do whether we're premenopausal women, whether we're younger than that, whether we're men, whether we're postmenopausal women. We need to be able to provide some impact loading into our skeleton to supplement the other things that we do, so that our bone health is something that we are addressing and doing something about, so that we can age better. And the Osteo-Gains Bone Health Program is certainly a vehicle for helping you to do that. And it's not about doing these impacts for 1 year or for 1 week. It's about lifelong weight-bearing activity. So it may be that the amount of force that you can tolerate as you get older is less, and that's fine. It's just doing what we can tolerate safely, but it's got to be more than what most people are doing and what they consider weight-bearing, which is walking. So walking is about 1 to 2 body weights of force. We need more than 3 body weights of force to switch bone on. Running is 2.5 body weights of force. It's not enough. So adding in this 2 to 3 minute program to supplement the other things you do is looking after your bones. In addition to the mechanical strain, we also need to think about the nutritional building blocks for bone. Calcium. We need to be getting enough calcium into our daily diet because calcium is what our bone. So when we get calcium in our diet, it is used to to basically reinforce our bone. And what we know is that most people aren't getting enough calcium. So it may be about doing some label reading and making sure that if you don't drink milk, for example, that you drink a plant-based milk, that you read the label to make sure that you're getting the same amount of calcium, so around about 120 milligrams per 100 mils. So that's going to be around about 300 milligrams per cup, like a 250 ml cup of and that would be part of what makes up what you need in calcium for the day. And I'm going to bring up a slide in a minute that gives you some other ideas about calcium. Another consideration is vitamin D. And we know that in New Zealand and Australia, vitamin D deficiency is becoming a real issue. Much of our population suffers from mild to moderate vitamin D deficiency. And vitamin D is connected not just to bone, but just about every part of our physiology. So getting enough vitamin D, firstly from our exposure to the sun. So we are able to synthesize vitamin D from the UVB rays, but they are the same rays that are blocked by sunscreen. So we need to have some exposure to the sun without sunscreen. So maybe that's before 9 a.m. in the morning in the summer months and after 5 p.m. in the summer months. We only need 6 to 7 minutes over about 15% of the surface area of our skin in the summer. But in the winter, we need much more exposure. So it's harder to get the 2 hours a day of exposure without sunscreen in the winter. So therefore, for those that are susceptible, having a blood test to assess whether you have good vitamin D status or a supplement may be warranted. So here we can see on this slide some ways of getting that 1,000 milligrams of calcium per day. And we can see just simply changing the type of milk that we're drinking may help us with that. So going from a normal full-fat milk here with around 300 milligrams for a cup to nearly doubling that by choosing a calcitrim milk. So there's also really good calcium in all of our dairy foods like cheese and yogurts, for example. And then we've got broccoli and other green leafy vegetables that provide really good calcium. And of course, nuts are an awesome source, especially our almonds. So just making sure that we are getting the building blocks for bone in our diet, as well as applying the mechanical strain that we need to optimize bone health. So to finish off this presentation, I think that I would like to say that this research is original and it's a vital contribution to preventative healthcare management. It has the potential to reduce the direct and indirect costs of osteoporosis to the health sector worldwide. And it's a prevention. It's a green prescription. So this is something that costs nothing, that is easy for you to be able to integrate into your own lives across the life cycle. Thank you for listening.